just like today, we as Christians, we use other genres to tell our stories. Like, I just wrote a novel about a serial killer called Cruel Logic. It's coming out September 12th, which is really short. It's coming shortly. And it's a serial killer story, and it's a fictional story, but kind of like Silence of the Lambs, right? So that's a genre of storytelling. And I'm a Christian and I'm writing serial killers. Well, the notion of the serial killer in my story is I'm using the serial killer genre to communicate that if that man with, well, let me say this. The notion of the story is this. There is a killer going around a fictional college campus in California. And he happens to be a philosophy professor who's a serial killer. What he does is he captures university professors and he debates them. And the topic of the debate is his moral right to kill them. So he says, okay, give me one reason. If what you say is true about the universe, give me one valid reason why I should not kill you, and I'll let you go. What he's doing is he's trying to uncover what their moral system is. And in fact, if you have atheistic, godless worldviews, you ultimately have no foundation for morality. It ultimately reduces to power or to individual subjective feelings, which that's no way to adjudicate what's true or false. It's just personal and subjective and it's relative. So you either have relativity or power. There is no foundation for morality. And he's making that sort of moral argument, and these professors can't answer him, And of course, he has something more in his plans as he's trying to make a point to the cop and the psychologist who are tracking him down. But I explain that just to make the point that the story is a genre about serial killers, but I'm using it as a means to communicate the moral argument for the existence of God, basically. And so what else do we do as Christians in our environment, as God's people in our environment? We use the genres and motifs. I'll write a vampire story and I'll use it to describe, be an analogy for the sinful nature, something like that. So it's natural for God's people to use the genre and symbols and images that they're all familiar with, because that's how people think. So I use those images and I incarnate them in stories in order to communicate that worldview. Now, of course, the better you do it, the more entertaining it is. And the worse you do it, the more preachy it can be. So that's always the problem. And that's why people get turned off by some stories, right? Because they're too preachy or whatever. But that's what I'm saying, is that why wouldn't the writers who wrote the Bible, they're no different than us. They live in a culture that uses all these concepts and images that they understand. Of course, they're going to use that to communicate the truth of God. And that's sort of the premise of God Against the Gods. And I go through other examples that we can talk about as you want.